Hello, nerds!
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 Hello, nerds! Hello, nerds!
Hello, nerds!
I love it, Maren. Welcome to the show.
Oh my God, it makes me laugh. I just watching that intro, I have to say, everybody with their own little flair.
We're trying to embrace. We're trying to take back the term nerd. I remember growing up, it was not a positive term, but it was used to describe me many times, too many times to remember. But I think it's kind of taken a more positive angle lately. So we're running with that. Welcome to the show. You and I, obviously, not obviously to the audience, but we worked together in the past in the tech industry. But I also was keen to invite you on because you became a bit of a public figure in the last couple of years. But before we get into that, why don't we just get a quick intro to who is Maren Costa?
Well, that's a good question and evolving constantly. I guess I am a designer at my core, a UX designer, but I got to UX design in sort of a, zigzag path, I guess.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I was like a women's studies major and an English major in a like huge feminist in college. I was writing feminist poetry and I was going to change the world with my feminist poetry and supporter of women and girls,
Mm-hmm.
and I got out of college and I started a sort of like what would be a startup today, but back then we didn't have apps or venture capitalist firms or anything like that. But I started this pretty successful women's sort of art collective, and we did events and curated art exhibits and had a magazine and whatever. And then I got into working for a crazy physicist. That's a whole another story. I shouldn't say crazy. He's crazy in a good way because he thinks completely outside the box. But doing the women's art collective, I was learning design, and with the physicist, I was learning all the technical ways to use the design software extremely technically. And I got a job at Adobe, supporting Adobe Photoshop, and then writing for Photoshop, and then went freelance design, and then ended up at Amazon. And Amazon, for 15 years, aside from, total of 17 years with a 2-year hiatus to Marchex, where we worked together. Amazon I feel like I kind of grew up at Amazon. But there was the thread of sort of activism the whole time. And I was thinking, poetry was sort of preaching to the choir. I could kind of tell I wasn't going to change the world that way. Then I thought I could use design to change the world. And then I really kind of found sort of collective action, like organized collective action. And now I'm pretty excited about that as maybe one of the best vehicles to create real change.
Yeah. So when you're talking about organized collective action, let me just give people a little bit of a little taste of your name showing up in the news. So let me go to good old Google search and I'll sort it by news. I mean, this is like CBS News. I saw Bloomberg. Your name came up, not just local news, but kind of national, Washington Post. So you were kind of, getting into scraps, let's say. What was that all about? Why were you in the news so much?
Well, you want the longish story or the super
Of course,
short
this is the Nerds channel. We like to let it breathe. Go ahead.
Okay, so after my 2-year hiatus at Marchex, I came back to Amazon, and I was working on launching the Amazon Go store. I was one of the early designers, and at that same time, I had been really passionate always about women and girls and supporting women and girls, and knowing that investing in women in third world countries is one of the best things you can do to have even for climate change, because women get educated, they start to make money, they have fewer children, their children become educated. It's just this whole beneficial cycle, I guess. But climate change started to really, really concern me. And I started to sort of feel like, if we don't have a planet to live on, then all this other stuff doesn't really matter. Of course, all of those things are completely connected, but I started to focus more on really what could I do? Where could I have the most impact personally on climate change?
Mm-hmm.
And everybody talks about, recycle, drive an electric car. Yay, that's all good. And I was doing that, but that's not actually, I hate to say it, but that's sort of like blaming the victim. We have these huge systems that are creating climate change and blaming the individual person for not recycling their juice box, or whatever it is. So, which you can't even recycle juice boxes anyways, because they're all mixed with materials, and that's intentional and blah, blah, blah. So I started, and even with Amazon Go, I was saying, like, we're talking about putting all that plastic silverware in those Go stores so you can take your grab and go food. And I was saying, we cannot use plastic silverware. It's just, that's irresponsible. It's bordering on immoral, And I did achieve getting the compostable silverware in those stores, but it was really apparent that, the incentives in large corporations are not set up to really do the right thing by our climate. So we tried, or I was trying all the internal mechanisms to try to move Amazon. I had had great success at Amazon in the past, where I could write a 6-pager or make a pitch to the right VP, and, things would change, teams would be built, impact would happen, like, major impact. And I just, when I tried to say, like, hey, climate change is not only good business, it's good for our customers. It's, it's the right thing to do, stand on the right side of history. We could really lead. This could be a great thing for Amazon. And it was just, I just hit a wall every time. Like, nobody, it was sort of a political issue. It was like, just nobody wanted to talk about climate change. We even went to the director of the sustainability org at the time, and we were talking to her about, we actually brought up Amazon's AWS contracts with the big oil and gas companies that help the big oil and gas companies get more oil faster and more efficiently, which is completely against what science would tell us is the right thing to do for the climate. And she was actually surprised. She kind of hit it, but she did not realize that Amazon was doing that, which sort of tipped us off a little bit, that maybe this sustainability org is more about greenwashing and PR than it is about real efforts towards sustainability. So we finally decided we kind of needed to, in order to act like an owner, as Amazon says, and really try to do the right thing for the company, we actually had to go outside of the company. And I was talking to the press in October about Amazon's, the contracts with the big oil and gas companies to dig up more oil. And I got warned at that time for speaking to the press. That's a big no-no at Amazon. You can't even talk about you can't even talk about good things. If you're talking about Amazon business in the public without getting VP approval, you're in trouble. So I knew I was taking a risk, but I did get a warning. And then fast forward 4 months to COVID. So October to February, we're kind of in a different world, or roundabout there. And we started the group, Amazon Employees for Climate Justice, which is the group that really started to form around climate. So we had I should not skip this part because it's very key. We actually had created a grassroots employee organization. And our first thing that we tried was to file a shareholder resolution challenging Amazon to become a climate leader instead of a climate laggard. Amazon was way behind. There was no climate pledge. There was no Earth Bezos $100 million fund, Earth Fund. They were just way behind. All of their peers, way behind. And so we used our, Amazon pays you in stock. We used our privilege and power as well-paid, valuable, stock-owning tech workers to try to pressure the company via a shareholder resolution to make a change. It did very well. In fact, two of the largest investment advisor firms, I forget their names now, actually recommended that shareholders vote for our resolution, but it didn't pass. We weren't surprised. That wasn't the point. It was more about bringing it up. And we actually, at that time, we did an open letter to Jeff Bezos saying, we really think this is best for Amazon. We think it's best for our customers. Your employees want it. And we had 8,700 tech workers sign that open letter openly. Wow. Yes, that was kind of unheard of. It's published online. Everybody's sort of breaking the rule about talking by doing that. But anyways, we didn't see a lot of change. Then there was the global climate strike, and we had over 3,000 tech workers walk out of their job for the day. Whoa. And as we were announcing that this was happening and telling everybody, not coincidentally, the night before the global climate strike, Amazon announced the climate pledge. So we had gone to a point where they wouldn't even agree to a date for when they would release their carbon footprint to the climate pledge in that short amount of time. And that success is widely attributed to our group, Amazon Employees for Climate Justice.
So that sounds copacetic. Everything's great. You worked, you influenced. There's a pledge now. We're good.
Yeah, we won. I mean, we won huge wins for the climate. The Bezos Earth Fund comes out. That's widely attributed to our group as well. We really moved the ball down the field in a way I've never been able to have so much impact in my life. That was the biggest lever I could have pushed for the good of humanity that I had available to me. And it really worked. Then COVID happened. Because our group had such success influencing Amazon, a lot of the warehouse workers were contacting our group and saying, we're really scared to go to work. We don't have PPE. We don't have 6 foot distancing. We don't have hand sanitizer. Nobody's taking our temperatures. And we don't have the health insurance, and most of them don't have the health insurance or the paid time off to safely or to even be able to consider taking a day off. When you're living on that salary, taking an unpaid day off can make the difference between paying your bills or not. Yeah. And so people were also coming to work sick. We actually spoke with a young kid whose dad had been an on and off Amazon worker. He had always wanted full-time, but he could never get a full-time job. And if you don't have full-time, you don't have the benefits. He got COVID. He continued to go to work until he couldn't. And he gave his wife COVID and he died. And so here's this kid mourning the loss of his dad, taking care of his mom, you don't hear stories like that and just say, I'm going to sit down and just let this go, like the outrage and the, it starts to feel like, to me, it starts to feel like a moral responsibility. I know not everyone sort of takes things as seriously as I do, but nevertheless, they were contacting us, and we decided we needed to do everything that we could to help them. And the thing that seemed like the best, sort of easiest thing to do was to just let them tell their story. So they were telling us, but Amazon's sort of big PR machine, which they're really, really good at, was telling, so for inside the company, we were seeing every day on the internal, homepage, like, we're doing such a great job, or we're taking care of our frontline workers, our heroes. We're doing everything we can. They're telling us that they feel so awesome, but then we're hearing this other story that's like, we're scared, we don't want to go to work, but we can't stay home. A lot of us have vulnerable, family members, all these things. So we thought, okay, let's set up a conversation between tech workers and warehouse workers, because tech workers have more pull. When tech workers complain, people listen, because we're a more valuable resource. When COVID hit the Amazon campus in Seattle, one case of COVID, the entire campus was shut down and everyone was sent home. I was in a building that was like 5 miles away from the building that had the COVID case. And, and the warehouse workers, however, you got all these cases of COVID, they just send you out and bring in more bodies. They just keep throwing more bodies at it. So anyways, we were going to set up a conversation, and we sent out, our group sent out, not me, but our group sent out an invitation to this conversation, kind of a town hall between tech workers and warehouse workers. We sent that out at about 12:30 on April 10th, Friday, Good Friday, before Easter weekend. So most people were probably already gone, or, especially Europe and India would have been offline. But nevertheless, within 2 hours, that invite had over 1,500 accepts. So people were very interested. There was a lot of interest from tech workers wanting to hear from their warehouse worker counterparts. But within that same 2 hours, I was fired in a 60-second phone call. The invitation was pulled off of people's calendars, and the email that had the information in it was deleted from everybody's servers and
like it never happened.
Like it never happened.
What was that call like?
Oh, well, it was, I was blindsided, I have to say, because I knew I was taking risks, and I knew that I was on their radar, but I didn't have anything to do with this particular, obviously our group did, and I was a very visible leader of the group, Amazon Employees for Climate Justice. However, the invite did not come from me. There was no real proof that I hadn't broken any rules as far as I knew. But a call came in, or a meeting came in 20 minutes before 3 p.m. On this Good Friday, April 10th. 20 minutes before 3, an email invite came in from my skip level manager. And we had just spoken a week earlier, and I thought, maybe we would just wanted to follow up on a few things that we talked about. Had a good relationship with him, but it seemed a little weird. But I got on the Zoom call, because here we're all at home, for COVID. Got on the Zoom call, and I see this unfamiliar face. She says, "I'm your HR rep. I want to make sure you're not recording this." I said, "No, I'm not." She said, "Okay, you were warned in October about breaking the external communications policy. You've continued to break policies, including the no solicitation policy. And by doing so, you have chosen to end your termination or end your employment with Amazon effective immediately. We'll send you a box for your stuff. I'm ending this call." Like, that's it. 15 years, boom. And of course, my son is sitting right in the other room there as he's home from school, and he heard the whole thing, and life lessons, I guess. He came over and he said, were you just fired? I said, yeah, I was. Still kind of shaking, just like, holy shit, did that just happen? I hope I can say that word on your show.
Yeah, it's fine.
And he said, is it because of the climate stuff? And I said, yeah, it is. And he said, do you have any regrets? And I said, absolutely not. Like, I'm doing this for you. I mean, you guys, if my generation doesn't do everything we can to stop climate change, and as we know, climate change, the climate crisis is not an environmental crisis. It's a justice issue. So it ties into everything that's happening now. But, if my generation doesn't do everything we can to address this, like, your generation doesn't have a very bright future. And as a parent, I just can't sit by and let that happen. I feel I need to do everything that I can to make a better future.
So let's just step back for a second, because that's a pretty intense story. You worked at pretty much one of the preeminent technology companies in the world. You were a very senior designer. You worked on the Amazon Go, the automated store stuff, all the cool stuff, right?
Yeah. I was actually Amazon's first principal designer.
Yeah. So that's a huge deal. Huge. So I'm guessing you were not working for free, and you had been compensated well in a competitive tech industry. Did that ever occur to you, like, whoa, I'm kind of poking a bear here, and that check that comes in every 2 weeks is greater than zero, and this could have like a material impact on my family, on my lifestyle, on my future. I could get blackballed. Like, what were you like? What's the thought process to do this?
I really had those thoughts in October, the first time I was warned. I felt a lot of conviction about what I was doing, obviously. But to get that warning and think, oh, wait a minute, like, I could actually lose this job. Do I want to lose this job? How would that feel to, walk away from Amazon? It's been such a big part of my life.
Yeah.
I have so many colleagues that I would call friends. It's like, it is a big part of your life.
Yeah.
And I definitely had scared moments, but it's the outrage. It's the fear the outrage turns the fear into action. And there was so much, my path with Amazon had just been diverging. I just kept seeing more and more ways. And, Amazon is just a member of our capitalist, society. I would say Amazon and Jeff Bezos himself sort of push neoliberalism versus capitalism. And so when you look at how a corporation could behave in the world, obviously they need to do everything they can for the shareholders. That's the goal. That's the golden rule of capitalism, money for the shareholders. But there are companies that do that in the most extreme possible way. And then there are companies that try to find some ways to sort of soften the sort of profit over people and planet. But Amazon wasn't really one of those. So I was starting to feel like it was kind of becoming soul crushing to come to work every day. And it's very hard to work a very intense and give that many hours of your day and your life to a job that is so diverged from your values. And I think that I'm not alone. I mean, I know I'm not alone. I know more and more people are starting to feel that way. I just talked to somebody, she contacted me on LinkedIn. We went to the same college. She said, tell me about Amazon. And I was like, well, here's the story, like great people, smart people, tech salaries, but here's what didn't sit well with me, and then at the end I was like, well, so tell me how let me know how your interview goes. And she's like, oh, I'm not going to be interviewing. I mean, I have a conscience. Like, she was like, I can't do that. I think more people are going to be feeling that way. So I did walk away from a lot of money, looking, at my balance of, stock, the grants that you can see the total that as they're going to be vesting, you have this much value. And then the next day, like, oh, then you just see the ones that you actually already own. And there's a huge difference. It's like, oof. But
you do it all over again?
I would do it all over again in a heartbeat. I couldn't not. I absolutely couldn't not. And honestly, because I am so informed about the climate crisis, and I think, I thought I was informed before. But now that I'm really more informed, I don't have a whole lot of, I'm not sure we're going to need our big investments. We're the world is not headed to a really great place. We're sort of looking at the next probably 3 to 5 decades of probably things getting worse before they get better. And I mean, the woman, my colleague, Emily Cunningham, that was fired on the same day, I think she would feel okay me saying this. She just cashed in all of her stock. She has a lump of cash, she's thinking about the carbon bubble popping, what's going to happen. There's so much unknown in our future right now. I feel that I'm willing to take some risks because I think our best hope is to fight as hard as we can to make it a good place rather than worry about our $1 million 401k plans. I mean, they're nice, but I guess I just feel more of a responsibility to, that money's not going to do my kids any good if they can't breathe clean air.
Yeah. If you had your druthers, like what would Amazon have done, or has Amazon done what you think it needed to do and mission accomplished, or do you think it needs to do more? Like what would you
it should do more. We did make huge strides, but there's 3 things that they really need to do if they want to be, they just did this climate pledge arena, they're doing all these big splashy things that sort of are signaling like we're like climate leaders. But if you were really a climate leader, you would discontinue your contracts with the big oil and gas companies. It's just those 2 things. You can't be truly caring about climate, and on the other hand, be helping people dig up more gas, because the intergovernmental panel on climate change, IPCC, they say we need to leave that oil in the ground. We can't even afford to burn the oil that we've already dug up, let alone dig more up and burn it. So there's that. And then their PAC, they donate to a lot of people that are supporting big oil. A lot of their money goes to, big oil support. So that would need to change. And then, the third thing is going to slip my mind right now.
Well, we'll come back to the third one when it comes to you, but I'm looking at the Amazon sustainability website.
Oh, that's what it is. We need to get to net zero by 2030. I think they're saying net zero by 2040.
Right. but they're all in on sustainability.
Yeah.
And they have all of these.
They did purchase the electric vans, which, they could have done 3 years earlier, but why did they? Because employees were pressuring them, and it was starting to, I would call that another win for our group.
Yeah.
Because why, there was nothing stopping them from writing that check.
Right. Your point is that maybe this is all good, but it didn't need to happen it's not a coincidence that it happened very recently.
Yeah.
What do you say, like, your point about the oil and kind of gas companies, it reminds me of many, many moons ago when I was in college, there was a big debate over divesting from companies that were in South Africa during the apartheid days.
Mm-hmm.
And the argument against that was always, well, look, if we don't invest there, like someone else will.
Yeah.
And so, like, yeah, maybe Exxon and Mobil are powered by Amazon Web Services, but if they weren't, I'm sure they'd find someone else.
Right? Argument Amazon uses internally. Yep.
And what do you say?
Well, I say that Amazon actually has a chance to be a leader. We now see Google actually opted out of some of their contracts. If you dig a little deeper, apparently it's not as bulletproof as it should be. But Amazon could be the leader and say, we are going to stand up and make that money look dirty. Then their competitor who takes it is like, oh, you're the one that decided to take it to kill the children, And they did finally put a pause on their facial recognition software with Palantir, because they're saying, as they rightly should. And I was really happy to see this. And I don't, and the same thing you could say, oh, someone else is going to sell their facial recognition software to Palantir. But, they're saying we aren't positive about the way it's being used. It's not 100%. It's not good enough for us to put it out there yet. And we can see the way that it can be misused. And so we're just going to put a moratorium for a year to try to let the technology catch up and have a better success rate that isn't, doesn't have a bias towards people of color, et cetera. So there are things they could do. There are things they could do. And they need to be pressured to do it. Corporations are going to move at the speed and in the direction of the pressure, not because of the goodness of their heart.
So lately, as I think about how we take care of our planet, one thing that has occurred to me is the potentially devastating effects of like extreme consumerism. And as many in the audience know, I lived for the last 4 years in Switzerland. We didn't have Amazon there. So when you needed stuff, like you really needed to want it, because you literally had to go to a freaking store and buy it. So yeah, there was no one click. I mean, you'd have to take a train, go to this town and buy your shit and then come back. And now I'm back in California with Prime.
Yeah.
I won't tell you how many freaking boxes show up on a weekly basis, but a lot. Yeah. A lot of plastic toys. Yeah. A lot of disposable things. Yeah. That, like, sometimes you get stuff in the mail and you're like, oh, why did I order this? What was this thing? And so I wonder, like, how do you feel about making it so easy for people to consume so much product that it's not like they're buying wood desks that they're going to give to their children. They're buying like plastic fans that seemed like a cool idea, or radio control cars that, get used by the kids for about a weekend and then end up in a closet. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Many. The first thought is, damn it, I contributed to that. Like, designers need to think about, designers and developers, we need to think about the stuff we're building and think about is it, I mean, even the mobile phones, they were built to be intentionally addictive, intentionally. We're preying on humans' sort of worst,
Instincts.
habits or yes, thank you. And that is like, wow, you can kind of see these things in retrospect, but at the time I just thought like, yeah, like we'll streamline this and you'll be able to just buy what you want whenever you want it. And it really is. It is that easy. And when I was respectfully disconnected from Amazon, I respectfully discontinued my shopping there as well, just to try to see. And because I had been, like one of the biggest Amazon, shoppers. I don't know. It was just, I didn't think it was an addiction or a habit, and I didn't think I was overbuying. But once I shut off my account, I realized how much I was buying. I mean, I'm sure it's sort of the Switzerland experience of just like, you don't even realize it until, and it was kind of an addiction. It was kind of a fun thing. Like come home and see the package on your step. It didn't matter something dumb that you didn't need. It was just that little burst of dopamine, like, oh, I have a package. Oh, a package. Oh, package.
Totally.
So I guess, well, and if you've ever seen the video, Stuff, it's if you search for Stuff, but I think it's like, it's a longer title, like About Our Stuff or How Our Stuff Happens or something like that. And it walks you through the whole material chain of things from extraction to you're chucking it out,
Yeah.
And, it talks about how it's extremely linear right now, and we need it to be circular, and extremely toxic. There are hundreds and hundreds of chemicals that go into these processes all the way along the way. There's tons of carbon, obviously. The original material is mined in one country, it's sent to another country for refinement, it's sent to another country for manufacturing, it's sent to another country for, whatever, putting it together, and then it comes to your little store and you go and buy it, or you buy it off of Amazon or wherever. But, and how all along the way, there's just toxins, and, now the most toxic, what is it? The highest levels of toxins found in organisms are in, I don't think you would ever guess, but it's human breast milk.
Ooh.
Yeah. So now we're feeding our babies. So it's still a good idea. So you still want to don't do the formula. It's still better. But wow, we don't think about the cost. It's like, I remember early on designing at Amazon, and we didn't used to show shipping on up front. You had to add it to the cart and then say you want to buy it. Then you would see the shipping, and everyone was so worried that showing people the fully landed, we called it the fully landed price, up front would make people not buy. And we did a bunch of web labs, and it actually did reduce sales a little bit, but we ultimately decided to actually show that up front. And then ultimately, I think it does become a win for them, or they wouldn't do it. But it was probably everyone else doing it, and then Amazon, people getting frustrated, and you get enough customer, but anyways, putting the fully landed price forward. And if you think about, if every item you bought had the carbon footprint price and the impact to human beings, or the justice price, like, was it a child in a sweatshop in China that made this toy that you were able to get so cheap because it's going to fall apart, and it's going to intentionally fall apart in 6 months. So if we actually exposed the fully landed cost of an item, would that slow down our consumerism? And I think it would. I think that would be a really good thing to see.
It would be interesting to know, like, oh, for us as a planet to be sustainable, each person should not produce or cause to be produced this amount of carbon. And now link your Amazon order history and we'll calculate for you how much you've used this year.
Yep.
I would not be surprised if this.
Amazon alone, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And I bet Americans, I think we probably consume more than most other countries per person, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So, Maren, I want to take some audience questions. So, audience in the chat, if you have questions for Maren, just put it in the chat with capital question : so I just can keep an eye out for it. Before we, thank you to Nell for a donation, super chat that will go towards stuff like this beautiful green screen, this little microphone. So all proceeds go to content production. But let's talk about your future, Maren, because you, as you mentioned, you're on a little bit of a social advocacy sabbatical, let's call it. And but are you planning on getting back into the industry? And then, like, what about your kind of public advocacy efforts now that maybe you have more time?
Well, I'm keeping all the options open for now. I actually have done some interviews with Facebook and, just to see if I'm blackballed. I don't think I'm blackballed. So that's interesting. But I would love to, and I love design, but I would love to find something more at the intersection of design, technology, and climate and justice. And there's so many opportunities there. Right now, my current focus, I'm kind of dropping everything to fundraise for Biden. He's not my first choice, but he's our only choice if you want something other than Trump. And so I do think that that's one of the biggest ways I can, right now at this moment, that's one of the biggest ways that I can have an impact. And I've even considered running for office at some point. And this is why I'm particularly interested in Of the People, which does your audience know about Of the People?
Most of them do, but let's tell them again.
Of the People is this brilliant startup that is going to help sort of kickstart, the average person, the non-politicians who would otherwise maybe never even think about getting, like me, like not even think about getting into office, not really know where to start. So you can, you'd be able to put yourself up there, put your profile, and then get votes from people, and you can kind of get voted up, and you can find out what's resonating with people. It's in the early stages. It's very exciting. There's all these things we need to do. The guest you had on the other day for the ranked choice voting, that is
Catherine Gale.
the most important things that we need to do. We can't expect that all of this is systems change. And you can't expect system change. Like, we're going to put Biden in, we're going to change one guy, and it's not going to change the whole system, because we have to change the system. So that's what I'm really looking into, is what are the levers that, there's in the systems change theory, who's the main, is a woman, I'm forgetting her name right now, but really awesome stuff. I've been reading some of her stuff, but kind of figuring out on that lever, if the system is here and you're trying to move the system, what are the things out here that you can do instead of the things down here, and then also understanding that all of these things are connected. So, if you're fighting for racial, equality, you're doing BLM stuff, we won't solve the climate crisis without solving racial justice. So they are hand in hand. In a lot of the things that we're currently doing for climate will not, you can clean up the energy grid, which would make a huge difference as far as carbon in the air. But if we still have white supremacy and neoliberalism, and we'll find new ways to break the system again. We're in a closed system for now. I know that Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos want to open up that system by getting us onto other planets, but I'm not sure that's going to happen in time. So we need to start living within our closed system, the way that works.
Mm-hmm. Well, tell me a little bit about sort of your thoughts on Biden. You mentioned your volunteering for him. I've gotten messages from you reminding me of the importance of this, of supporting the campaign, which I do. But it's a bit controversial, and I know you are familiar with it, living in Seattle, which is a pretty progressive city. There's a lot of folks who are like, well, Biden's kind of a moderate. He's not, on the front end of climate change. He's not like a Steyer or Inslee, right? What are your, and so people are like, well, they're kind of like the same. Trump, Biden, what's the difference?
Oh my God. Especially not with regards to climate. On November 4th, if Trump wins, we are out of the Paris Agreement. And that will be disastrous for not just the US, but for the planet. And that's the thing, is we're all too interconnected now to have one country not playing the game and not have that affect all of us. So Biden, he has pledged support for the Green New Deal, whereas Trump, you read Trump's, energy achievement list, and it's like a love letter to big oil. It's just one thing after the other. Like it's just complete denial of the world that we're in. It's terrifying. So yes, I am focusing a lot of my energy on doing everything I can to get Biden elected.
Yeah. What are there specific things that you would like to see Biden do? It sounds like rejoining the Paris Accords would be one of the first things.
We need to be in the Paris Agreement, and I would love to see us pushing for 1.5 degrees more aggressively. Well, we're not right now. We're on track for 3 degrees warming, but even less than 1.5. It's like when they actually agreed to 1.5, they knew that was actually bad. That wouldn't actually be awesome. But the goal was to get back and review every year and keep trying to bring that down. But we're doing such a poor job, all of us, that we're hoping to stop it at 2.
Mm-hmm.
So Green New Deal, I would love to see the Green New Deal. The Green New Deal passed, basically, they call it the Green Deal in Europe. I'm sure you know about this, Tom.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, this is yes.
Oh yeah, you want to take a little gander at the president's environmental accomplishments?
This is what we'll get if we reelect Trump.
So we have more oil and gas leases over 78 million acres in the Gulf of Mexico. That is an environmental accomplishment, apparently. Increase the export of coal and fossil fuel internationally. Keystone XL, Dakota Access. I mean, you're right. It definitely.
It's like they're boasting about it. They're literally boasting about it. It's a walk of shame, and that's their banner waving.
Oh, they've rescinded the Obama emissions rules.
Yep.
Yeah. So yeah.
And he's going to withdraw.
He's not exactly the green president.
Unfair Paris Climate Accord.
Yes. Yes. He branded it.
Yeah.
The failed New York Times and the unfair Paris Accord.
Yes. So
you think Biden, even though Biden's no Inslee, you think he'd be better than Donald?
Yeah. You got to vote. You got to vote not Trump.
Yeah. And then last thing I was curious about before we wrap up, Maren, is like what advice do you have for people who are in similar situations where to speak truth to power would kind of jeopardize their own personal kind of benefits or livelihood? Well, I
would say don't do it alone. I mean, God love you if you want to stand up by yourself and go on strike, but if you do it alone, you're probably not going to make a difference, and you'll just get fired. So before you take those risks, make sure you have strength in numbers. We did, as a group, we had the 8,700 people sign the open letter to Jeff. When I spoke to the media, when I got my warning, right after that, the whole group together, we had 400 people mass defy the external communications policy, so that they can't enforce a policy in a cherry picking way. So they can't fire all 400 of these people that published a quote on a media article talking about Amazon's businesses doing the same thing that I did to get warned. So you have to have people backing you up. It really is about collective action. And the way that you build that base is one-to-one. It's sort of like you talk to 10 people, they talk to their 10 people, and you build a base. And this is how collective action happens, is getting people on board. And then once you have enough people on board, then you can do a mass action, whatever it is, whether it's a strike or and this is what Amazon is so afraid of. They are, and you've seen recently, they just came out there, they got busted for publishing job, job openings for, data analysts or something, but it was openly stated that we want to monitor organizing. We want to monitor and shut down employee organization, because they know it works. When employees get organized, they have power.
What would you say, Maren, to the counterpoint that in an alternate scenario, had you stayed at the company over the next 5 years, you could kind of like reform it from within? I'm sure you've talked with that has come up with other people. Like, could you have just nudged,
I tried that. That's the thing. I tried that for probably 2 years from within, and I couldn't get any substantive change. In fact, I couldn't even get an ear,
Yeah.
The org I was working in when I left was the org that, if we were going to do something risky and major like that, but that would benefit the world and our customers, that was the org that would have done it. And I couldn't get anyone to take a bite.
Well, what do you think is the root cause of that kind of lukewarm reaction? Because my understanding is that Bezos he's a smart guy, and he's no dummy. He sees the climate science. Frankly, he's put in like more than $1 billion for his rocket company. So why so kind of ambivalent about Amazon being a leader in climate stuff?
I think he has, as smart as he clearly is, I think he has some blind spots. And I think one of them is the idea that technology will come swooping in and save us in time. And I think he believes that's obviously a possibility. So it's not a crazy belief, but I think he believes in that more fully than I think we should. I don't think we should not do everything. I think we need to do parallel paths. We need to keep pursuing the technology as the savior, but we need to work still at the same time as fast as we can to turn things around with what we have. We already have everything we need we have all the technology we need to stop climate change now. We're just not doing it.
Yeah. No, he probably, it sounds like he does have great confidence in the power of technology, which obviously he has firsthand experience with that.
Yeah.
I wonder if the company value of frugality is also kind of at odds, because a lot of times to be more climate sustainable, it's not the cheaper option, at least not in the near term. And my understanding is that the company is very much around massive reduction in costs for the benefit of the customer, but it's for the benefit of the customer buying that object today. It's not, trying to think about the total cost of that consumption.
It's the short-term gains.
Yeah.
The huge short-term gains.
Maren, thank you so much for sharing your experience. And by the way, a lot of the folks in the chat are very impressed by you, and Emily saying that you're awesome and that they love you. So who knows? Maybe if you want to advocate in the future in a even more public way for office, as one of the first of the people candidate profiles.
Find me on OTP.
You down with OTP? So yeah, we'll hopefully get you back on the show. And I just want to say, I'm very personally super impressed with the sacrifice that you made. That's a huge sacrifice that you made, and you kind of did it knowingly. And people can serve the country in a lot of ways, but what you've done to kind of push and nudge and cause good kind of trouble within Amazon, it seems like you can tell, at least at a minimum, they know they're kind of on notice, and they're trying to do a little bit more. And frankly, that probably wouldn't have happened as fast or at all had it not been for the work that you did and all of your other colleagues who kind of said, hey, we need to do more here. So thank you for doing that.
I can't do anything else. And I'm going to keep doing it as much as I can, whenever I can. So that's what it's going to take. It's going to take all of us. This is an all hands on deck situation. And to change everything, we need everyone. And it's going to take people standing up and being brave and taking risks and there will be some sacrifice, but it's all going to be better than what happens if we don't.
Yeah. Amen. I think this is one of those things where you got to do the right thing for the great grandchildren, not for next week's kind of immediate term, lifestyle. Yeah. Well, Maren, with that, I think we're going to wrap up this conversation with a goodbye, nerds.
Goodbye, nerds.
I love it.